normally, one of the guys from Dan White and Associates calls in with a great tip at 1:30, but not when there's a ball game. So that's why I've invited Andrew Wood to be on today. Andrew Wood is a financial planner specializing in retirement income, works with Dan White and Associates. He's in the Middletown office. Brilliant guy, always fun to talk to. Andrew, thanks for being on. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Good. So what's since you missed the ball because of the ball game, what's on deck today?
So just wanted to talk about, general retirement, but I think the question that, especially if you're leading into retirement, whether it's this year or in the next few years, the question you got to ask yourself is, do you know where your retirement paycheck is coming from? In retirement, it's really not that much different from when you're still working. You still have bills to pay, right? So you got to pay those bills. And in retirement, your paycheck doesn't come from work. And typically it's going to come from your savings, Social Security, pensions, maybe some other sources. I've seen rental income, things like that. But, knowing exactly what's coming in each month and what's going out is going to be crucial to providing a little bit more certainty and clarity. And, I think it's just important to create a simple income plan that covers at least your basic expenses first. And I know we've talked about this kind of stuff before, but here's the issue that I see. It's that most people, when they come in our office, they have assets. They have, 401ks and retirement accounts, but they have no idea really what it means in terms of income. And one of the biggest issues that I see is, some people, they look at these accounts, whether they're, 6 figures, 7 figures, and they kind of just take withdrawals as they need it without working out any kind of income plan. And unfortunately, that can be a recipe for disaster.
Why?
But,
why is that a recipe for disaster?
Because there's no general plan. And, when you see, again, the amount in the accounts, people just kind of assume that money's always going to be there.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But there's a guy by the name of Tom Hegna, and he's actually done a couple programs for us, and he's a very well-known retirement expert, author, but he wrote a book that's titled Paychecks versus Playchecks. And really there he stresses, based on math and science, it's not just his opinion, but the importance of having protected lifetime income or guaranteed income to cover your basic expenses with, what we call paychecks, guaranteed income. So I think it's important, for those people that want to have more clarity and certainty, if you like that idea or that concept of building out guaranteed income to cover at least your basic expenses, I think it's important to understand your options.
So make a budget, make reasonable assumptions, and abide by the plan?
Well, absolutely. But again, I think it's important, if you want to have that comfort and clarity, build out a plan that is at least covering your basic needs, your bills and expenses that you're going to have to pay every month. Have that covered with some protected, lifetime income options. But when it comes to, the fun stuff, right, where we can't really predict, but, whether that's entertainment, travel, spending time and spending money with grandkids and things like that, that's where really what he calls paychecks, and that's where they really come in. And it's, perhaps, maybe you don't necessarily need or want to have that income guaranteed. So, you can look at some other options, maybe some more, volatile type of income strategies might actually make sense. But again, I think it's important to make sure that when you're going into retirement and even before retirement, it's important to make sure you're developing a plan to optimize, your assets and your retirement for you, based on what you need and really your comfort level as well.
And stuff that you don't even know you're going to want and need when you're older.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
I feel like I get a call every week. It's like, hey, whether it's roof, windows, wedding, helping grandkids or even kids with weddings and things like that,
Right.
Those types of things pop up. But
like, hey, they're asking me to help pay for the wedding. Well, of course you are, and
right.
and you want to, so of course you're on the list of being called. Mom, and pop. Hey, do you think they could help out with this? Yes, and then I have friends who, for a wedding, for example, they just said, hey, we just need money for the wedding. Don't forget all the gifts. We got a Cuisinart. How about helping us out with the wedding? Which I think is pretty funny.
So, Rick, I think it's actually funny. I've run into this situation myself, but it's when you think about the people who ask for help. It's usually the kids asking the parents for help, right?
Yeah.
It's not the other way around. So, like, we look at, like, long-term, retirement planning. Oh, my kids will be there. My kids are successful. And, they might be there, but it's really difficult for a parent to ask their children for help, especially when it comes to this stuff. So, you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself, and you have that bulletproof plan, that baseline of income that makes sure that you're comfortable and you're going to be okay.
Oh yeah, it's a matter of pride. It's a matter of parenting. It's not just ego. It's like, I can't ask my kids. My gosh, they're the ones that are depending upon me. I don't want to turn that around and be dependent upon them, even though that does happen. Yeah, I get that. And a real tragedy.
And will be more. Half the time, they're more than willing to help, but you just got to ask. So,
I know.
But again, you're right. That pride is really. It's really impactful because, it's difficult. It's difficult to ask your kids, for help every now and again. But
I know we're off the topic of financial planning, but I'm really glad you brought this up because, I've heard anecdotal stories. I've seen this happen in the news where grandparents, parents of adult kids get themselves into some kind of bind, and they're embarrassed about it. Maybe they fell for a scam, a phishing scam. Maybe they gave somebody money, or maybe they went and got a whole bunch of like Visa cards or something like that to pay some Social Security scam or something like that. And they're embarrassed about it. They don't want to tell the kids that, oh my gosh, somebody stole 20 grand from me or even more. Bottom line is, a lot of people get scammed. Yes, you're embarrassed. Yeah, you're ashamed. Move on. Ask the kids for help.
Absolutely, get some kind of help, especially in that type of situation, because I know there are resources that can help in those types of things, or at least attempt to. But
you're a great resource for other resources, Andrew.
Absolutely.
There you go. Well, now could you call Andrew at 888-690-8820? Smart guy, great guy, really cares about folks, and a brilliant financial planner specializing in retirement income. 888-690-8820. Then on the Sunday morning here on 1150 AM and 1017 FM and streaming to your smartphone or whatever device you like to use is Dan White at 7 a.m. on WDEL and all of our platforms with On the Money, right?
Every Sunday morning we do, obviously, well, you help us. We do record those and tape those. They do go on our website. But this Sunday show is what a Roth conversion can and cannot do for you. So I know a lot of people love that idea of building out some tax-free income in retirement, but it's important to understand, the pros and cons. There's always going to be pros and cons of everything. So he's going to cover those things.
All right, very good. Andrew Wood, Dan White & Associates. Good conversation. Thanks for the call.
Weekend.
All right, take care. You too.
You got it.
All right, go Phils.